world. The sperm counts in the United States have gone down 50% just in the last 50 years. We have autoimmune diseases going up. The average American now is on 4 medications, and only about 40% of Americans are on none. Autism is going up 14% every year and has for the last 23 years. Who is asking why? These are the root causes in our broken healthcare system. And instead of addressing these root causes, we've got these shiny objects in the periphery. We get distracted. The healthcare positions of politicians, doesn't matter the party, we got Medicare to negotiate the drug prices of 10 generic drugs. Great, good. I don't think anyone's really opposed to that in principle, but the savings that they claim was $6 billion in a $4.7 trillion healthcare economy that's expanding by 8% a year in the commercial market. That's about a $250 billion expansion per year. We saved $6 billion. The best way to lower drug prices in the United States is to stop taking drugs we don't need. We've poisoned this food supply. We've engineered these highly addictive ingredients that are designed to be addictive, and you eat and you're not full, but you're quasi-full, but your hunger has increased. We've blamed patients for their diseases. We dole out mental health diagnoses in childhood, ignoring the fact that maybe we've asked a child to sit sedentary at a desk under a fluorescent light for 7 hours a day, every day, and that may not be natural. And 40% of American teens today will have a mental health diagnosis. If they're nervous before a test, we say, you have anxiety. And we medicate kids. Now, there are true indications for medical interventions, but we have the most medicated population in the history of the world. And no one in medicine is stopping to ask what's going on. We have these giant blind spots in our American healthcare system. Food today is not the food of 50 and 100 years ago. If we can take a macro look at the historical epidemiology of what's happening, not just over the last 50 years, one living generation we have transformed to an incredibly sick and over-medicated population. And you don't see it overseas. You don't see it in parts of Europe and Africa. Bread is not bread. The bread we serve in school lunch programs is not bread. What they do is they take whole wheat, they strip it of the fiber, they remove 20 nutrients, they chop it up in pieces so small it doesn't represent a naturally occurring ingredient, and this flour is essentially functioning as sugar. It is essentially functioning as sugar. We give it to kids every day with the dogma that breakfast is the most important meal of the day. You know where that came from? 1958 General Mills advertising campaign for Kellogg. Okay, I don't think cavemen woke up to a breakfast buffet. They would hunt and gather and then have food at the end of the day. It's almost like we're learning for the first time in our sophisticated healthcare system these basic principles. Maybe we don't have to eat 3 meals a day that are all large. Maybe there's benefits to fasting and whole foods and foods that grow out of the soil and clean meats and meditation, all the things we've known about since ancient biblical times. We're rediscovering. We have to zoom out and stop just talking about these chemical pathways we're trying to drug and actually talk about health. We have foods that are not food. I don't know what they are. They're ultra-processed ingredients. And we're giving them to people and wondering, why are they getting sick? Take milk in school lunch programs. We take out natural fat, natural saturated fat, because we've demonized it, it's bad for you, and we add something that's actually bad for you, and that's sugar, in a little carton of milk. You see here 21 grams of carbohydrates, 20 of which are refined carbohydrates, added sugar. That's not good for your pancreas. Our modern day pancreas in our living generation, for the first time in history, has been stimulated like it's never been stimulated before with massive surges of insulin. And we talk about health in a strange way. We talk about your mammogram is normal, or in your colonoscopy, we did not find a polyp. Maybe there's another way to define health, and that is how well your mitochondria are working in your body, how much we've damaged cells to the point where they get so much glucose in the cell, they have to block it by blocking the insulin receptor, and that's what we call insulin resistance. If you get a set of blood tests in America today, you should be getting an insulin level, fasting insulin level, fasting glucose level, lipoprotein A and apoprotein B. Not these broken, ancient dinosaur tests that they order when you come in to see the doctor. Why do we demonize fat? Because Ansel Keys, from a scientist 70 years ago, said fat was bad for you. He was a politician scientist, if you can envision such a thing. It's very imaginary, and just try to imagine what that would look like. And he had a study that he did that was a sham study. Was it fraud? I don't know. He misrepresented his results by not showing all the countries. He tried to graph heart disease and fat consumption in the diet by country. Well, first of all, how does he know what people are eating? And in his data set, he did not include data from 14 countries that would have changed the results to show there was nothing wrong with natural saturated fat in the food supply. But he watched Eisenhower have a heart attack, and he told the country that was because Eisenhower had natural fat in his diet, bad man, and therefore he had a heart attack, and in order to prevent heart disease, we have to get people to stop eating natural fat. And the bandwagon took off. The groupthink in modern medicine. If you thought you saw groupthink in the last few years, that was a peek into how the broader medical establishment can operate with its small group of people making the decisions. Now, they tried to do a study to definitively answer the controversy in the 1960s and 70s called the Minnesota Heart Study, randomizing people to a low-fat diet versus a standard American diet, which we call SAD, by the way. And guess who had more fatal heart attacks? The low-fat group. Not what they expected. So what did they do? They did not publish the results for 16 years after the study was done. When Dr. France was asked, and I go through all this in the book Blind Spots, why didn't you publish the study that disproved the fat heart disease hypothesis? He said this. He said, we were just so disappointed in the way the results turned out. That's not how you do science, okay? Two other major randomized trials, the Women's Health Initiative and the Framingham study, tried to prove that natural fat caused heart disease. Neither of them found the association. Didn't matter. The American Heart Association was making millions licensing out their little heart seal to every mom and pop restaurant in the country. Oh, this has, low fat, even though it's all refined carbohydrates from pasta or bread or whatever. This is low fat, this is low fat. And we moved people to a high refined carbohydrate, ultra-processed food diet with active, chemically engineered ingredients. This is a manufactured epidemic. As we did that, obesity rates soared in total parallel correlation with the low-fat recommendation. Was there an apology? No. At the same time, we watched food additives take off. People from the tobacco industry who had engineered cigarettes to make them addictive had lost their jobs after the global settlement, and they moved over to the food industry. And so food additives entered the picture, and here's what food additives do. On the right is Fruit Loops made for the United States for American children by Kellogg. On the left is Fruit Loops made for Canadian children and European children made by the same company, Kellogg. These ingredients are banned in these other countries. Yellow number 40, red number 9. These are ingredients that have been found to be associated with depression and all kinds of other things. Here's what's happening with all these engineered products and ultra-processed foods. The GI system has its own immune system in the wall of the GI tract, and it's reacting. The reason you have so much immune cells and nodes along the GI tract is it's the front line of defense of things that go in your body. So it's reacting, and it's not a big inflammatory acute reaction. It's a low-grade, chronic inflammation that makes you feel sick. Low energy, sick, irritable bowel, chronic fatigue, you name it. There's a million different things we call it, but what's happening is the body is reacting to these substances. It's not just food additives, it's microplastics, it's pesticides. We pour 5 billion gallons of pesticides on our food supply, and we wonder why the average age of puberty is going down. Well, guess what? Pesticides have estrogen binding properties. And so the correlation is right in front of our eyes. Are these things we're studying at the NIH? No, we're not studying. We're too busy funding research on Japanese quail taking cocaine and watching their sexual activity. And bat coronaviruses in Wuhan, China. That's what has been getting funded, not basic research on food as medicine and micronutrients and the safety of the chemicals that go in. We put fluoride in the drinking water. The CDC has it on their website as one of the 10 greatest public health achievements in human history. Go to their website. 10 biggest public health achievements in human history. Fluoridation of drinking water. Europe doesn't do it. Only a third of Canadian water has it. Here it's almost all the water. Why do we do it? Because we found out it kills bacteria in the mouth. Well, let's not be so myopic. Let's look at the whole body. If it's killing bacteria in the mouth, what is it doing to the microbiome? The millions of different bacteria that live in the gut that are involved in digestion. Those bacteria produce vitamins. They make serotonin, involved in mood and mental health. What are we doing? We're messing with Mother Nature in ways we don't understand. Seed oils are not seed oils. Don't be fooled. There's nothing natural about seed oils. They're in everything that we eat. 10 to 20% of the calories we consume in America today are from seed oils. What are seed oils? It's not soybean, corn, vegetable oil. That sounds natural. It sounds healthy, but what they do is they take these ingredients because they're super cheap from government subsidies from the guys down the street, and they're so cheap that they can boil them, denature them, add a chemical solvent that they figured out in the petroleum industry, how to make a cheap lubricant, and then you have byproduct chemicals that in no way represent anything found in nature. When you introduce things not found in nature into the GI tract, the body will react with inflammation. What is every disease from rheumatoid arthritis to mental illness to heart disease? It's an inflammatory condition. Heart disease is inflammation of the coronary artery wall, which enables the dense small lipoproteins like Lp(a) to deposit. That is what causes heart disease, not natural fat. And antibiotics, that's like carpet bombing the microbiome. It rips through the GI tract. Now, antibiotics save lives, and they're necessary, but over 60% of the antibiotics administered in the United States are unnecessary according to a CDC study. I'm not sure that's the best source nowadays, but I think it's 80%. I think it's 80%. Here's what just came out of the Mayo Clinic. Now this, I think, is the most significant study of the modern era. It just came out a year ago. I write about it in the book Blind Spots if you're interested in this topic. They looked at 14,000 kids. They compared kids who took an antibiotic in the first few years of life compared to kids who did not. The kids who took an antibiotic in the first couple years of life had a 20% higher rate of obesity. They had higher rates of allergic rhinitis, dermatitis, almost a 300% higher rate of celiac. People come in with celiac and they say, what's causing this? And we say, we don't know, or we make something up. No, we do know. Altering your microbiome. They had higher rates of attention deficit disorder and learning disabilities, a 32% higher rate of learning disabilities. All these chronic diseases have been going up in the modern era of widespread messing up of the microbiome with massive overuse of antibiotics since the 1950s and 60s, C-section deliveries, which changed the microbiome, and all these ultra-processed foods and chemicals. The guy who discovered antibiotics, Alexander Fleming, had warned after he got the Nobel Prize in 1945, he said, a stern warning to the medical establishment. He saw massive overuse, and he warned that if we overused antibiotics, there would be unintended consequences that could also reverse all the benefits that we had seen of antibiotics finally making surgery possible, enabling women to deliver safely, and allowing kids to survive if they got a little cut on a tree. In the past, those were fatal events. He has made massive warnings that we have ignored in our blind spots of modern medicine. We overdo C-sections. Now, sometimes C-sections save lives, but about 40% are unnecessary, and then you hear all kinds of stories out there. How does a C-section change your microbiome? Well, in utero, the gut is sterile. The baby does not have bacteria in the gut. How does a baby get millions of different types of bacteria that live in this harmony in the microbiome? Well, when a baby is born through the vaginal canal, the bacteria in the birth canal will seed the microbiome, augmented by bacteria from breastfeeding and from skin and contact. But when you're born by C-section, doctors extract a sterile baby from a sterile operative field, and what may seed that baby's microbiome are the bacteria that normally live in the hospital. And it's very different. We've known that, but no one's looked at this because it's been in the blind spots of modern medicine. We do it with the dogma that it doesn't make a difference. You can choose to have your baby either way. Higher rates of asthma, inflammatory bowel diseases, ulcerative colitis, Crohn's disease when you're born by C-section. And this study just came out a few months ago that the higher rates of colon cancer we're seeing in young people under age 50 was associated with people being born by C-section. We have got to pay attention to these signals in the data, but we've done a terrible thing to doctors in this country. We've told them, focus on your billing and coding. We're going to measure you by your throughput. And we don't give doctors the time or resources to deal with the root causes of all of these diseases that are on the rise. We give them the interventions of a prescription pad or a surgical knife, and we say, go ahead and stomp out disease by dealing with the end stages once it gets so bad, and don't think outside the walls of the hospital. If you want to do research on any of these aspects of the food supply, or pesticides, or microbiome, or any of these associations we're seeing on a macro level, put your head down, focus on your NIH grants, which are small incremental discoveries of old dinosaur legacy ideas. And we have done a terrible thing to doctors in this country. We've conditioned them. It starts in medical school. We force them to memorize and regurgitate the molecules in the Krebs cycle, like 10 times. Why? Do you need to know that in the trauma bay? No, we give them thousands of medications and expect them to develop an eagle's eye to identify indications and treat, diagnose, treat, diagnose, treat. What are we doing? We've got to take a step back and ask these big questions. With C-sections, we're now doing physician profiling, where we can identify how often a doctor is doing a C-section in a low-risk delivery and create some accountability and have a healthcare marketplace that is based on appropriateness of care and the price, not just NFL ads and valet parking. We have competition in healthcare, but it's at the wrong level. It's at the level of ads and convenience. It needs to be at the level of appropriateness, quality, and price. And so we're working with groups like Bryce and Katie and others And we have ways that you can look up a OB doctor anywhere in the country and see what their C-section rate is in a low-risk delivery. We have 400 of these appropriateness measures, and this is what we should be competing on. Maybe we need to treat more diabetes with cooking classes instead of just throwing insulin at people. Maybe we need to treat more high blood pressure by talking about sleep quality and stress management, not just giving first line after second line antihypertensives. Maybe we need to talk about food as medicine and actually look at the school lunch program in America, not just put every kid on Ozempic when they achieve a BMI greater than 20. We're not going down a good path right now. We have got to stop focusing on sickness and start focusing on health. And it's not going to be the medical establishment that pivots and fixes itself. It's going to be employers with good guidance who decide to disrupt healthcare and empower doctors to tackle these issues through point solutions, like you just heard about in the last session, with direct primary care that can actually spend time with patients and address the root causes of disease. It's going to be you that fixes our healthcare crisis. We have giant blind spots in modern medicine. Any smart person is going to develop blind spots. Now more than ever, there's a small oligarchy, a priesthood in medicine. A few people at the top who are making all the recommendations. And when they use good scientific evidence, we shine as a profession. We help people. But that's not the tendency of a small group of people with a lot of power. Their tendency is to get more power and to dismiss those who may have a different opinion. That's what they did with John Yudkin, the famous doctor who said it's not natural fat, it's refined carbohydrates and added sugar that causes inflammation, causing heart disease. They crushed him. When the American Academy of Pediatrics said that they were going to finally tackle the problem of peanut allergies in the United States, peanut allergies were mild, they were rare. A generation ago, does anyone remember peanut allergies anywhere near the magnitude that we see today? No. In Africa, to this day, peanut allergies don't exist. Many parts of Europe, Southeast Asia, there are no peanut allergies. I've talked to doctors there, no such thing. Why is it a uniquely American problem? Because the American Academy of Pediatrics in the year 2000 told all mothers to make sure no child has exposure to peanut butter, that lactating mothers, pregnant women have zero peanut exposure, and they believed that was to prevent peanut allergies. Did they do a study? No. But they did the worst thing you can do in medicine, and that is have a gut feeling about something and put it out there with such absolutism that you tell everyone they have to do it, they have to listen, just comply. So after this recommendation in the year 2000, what happened to peanut allergy rates? Within years, they started to skyrocket. We saw a new type of peanut allergy, which was the ultra-severe anaphylactic response. That is, a kid can be near a peanut and have trouble breathing or stop breathing. That's a real thing. We shouldn't mock it. Where did it come from? It came from the fact that the recommendation to avoid peanuts in the first 3 years of life causes immune sensitivity. It doesn't prevent peanut allergies when you abstain from peanut butter and peanuts in the first few years of life. It causes peanut allergies. And so as rates went up, what did the medical establishment do? Did they do the definitive study they needed to prove their hypothesis correct? No. They said that we have anti-science parents out there who must be sneaking peanut butter into their kids' diets. And we have to double down and get more compliance. And they doubled down. And as they doubled down, rates went up. It became a self-licking ice cream cone. We saw a massive epidemic. It was only 7 years ago that a doctor, not in the US, but a brave doctor in the UK, did a basic randomized control trial of infants who did early peanut butter exposure versus the standard abstinence recommendation. And guess what? Massively different rates of downstream peanut allergies and other health problems. Over 8-fold difference He didn't see the severe allergies. That explains why no one in Africa, where they didn't follow this dogma, has a peanut allergy to this day. And to this day, the United States has the worst peanut allergy epidemic in the history of the world. Estrogen. When women cannot make estrogen anymore, when their ovaries stop producing it, women who take estrogen have tremendous benefits. They feel better and live longer. It not just alleviates the symptoms of menopause, but they live on average 3.5 years longer. The rate of heart attacks goes down in half. The estrogen increases nitric oxide that keeps the blood vessels soft and dilated and healthy. It does something to the neurons that we don't understand that preserves them and increases function. That's why cognitive decline on women who take estrogen replacement starting at the time of menopause goes down 50 to 60%. Less brain fog. There is a 35% reduction in Alzheimer's. And if a woman falls or breaks a bone, their bones are stronger. They're far less likely to need an operation. The overwhelming health benefits of estrogen replacement are so clear, you would wonder why anyone would not take it. There's probably no medication in the history of modern medicine, arguably with the exception of antibiotics, that has improved or could improve the health outcomes of a population more than estrogen replacement. But the reason why 80 to 90% of women are not on it or were never recommended to take it is because 22 years ago, a researcher from the NIH held a press conference at the National Press Club, which is about 4 blocks away, announcing to the world that he had just completed the largest study ever done in the history of medicine, a $1 billion taxpayer randomized control trial. And he found, he said, that taking estrogen increases the risk of breast cancer. He didn't release the data, so what did the media do? They ran with the story. Doctors believed it. Everyone believed it. Women flushed their pills down the toilet, or the patch that is often used to administer estrogen. And when the data finally came out, a couple doctors noticed, wait a minute, the confidence interval in the statistical test included the integer 1.0, which means it is not statistically significant. There was no increased risk of breast cancer and no increased risk of breast cancer mortality. It was medical dogma. To this day, 80 to 90% of primary care doctors will not prescribe estrogen. 50 million women have been denied this incredible health benefit, including my mother, who just broke a bone, and I have to think she would not have needed the surgery she had she been on estrogen. But this announcement came out right when she went through menopause. And I found the lead investigator in retirement, about 45 minutes from here, and interviewed him for the book Blind Spots. How could you say this causes breast cancer when there was no statistical significance? He started to talk over my head and get into all the statistics and numbers, and tried hard to make it sound like he was the expert in statistics, so just trust him. He picked the wrong dude, okay? I have a degree, studied biostatistics at the Harvard School of Public Health. I went toe-to-toe to him, and he admitted after a long, contentious 2-hour interview, recorded, that estrogen replacement does not increase the risk of breast cancer mortality, but he just believes in his gut that it probably does. Maybe the greatest screw up in the history of modern medicine. People need to know the truth. Right now, the biggest topic in medicine is trust. Why is trust down? Because we're not valuing clinical excellence. We see a study we like, so we parade it around, even though it's flawed. We see a study that has a result we don't like, we dismiss it in modern medicine. If it talks about pesticides, well, we can't address that. There's too big of a problem. No, these are the central issues that relate to the health of the public. And if we don't value clinical excellence, we're going to continue to squander money, medicate the population, Pharma has captured American research. Unless pharma likes a study that is going to support their objectives, or the old guard belts and suspenders professors at the NIH thinks it fits one of their legacy department ideas, then it's not going to get funded. But now that's changing. We have podcasts, books, a bunch of us are going directly to the public, educating them, bypassing the medical establishment. Mark Hyman, Peter Attia's book was #1 for the year last year. Casey Means, her book is #1 on the New York Times, on the Amazon bestseller list. My book, it's not even out yet, it's #2. We're going directly to the public and saying, you have been lied to. And it's not because doctors are bad people, it's because we have had bad leadership and a culture of medicine that has promoted billing and coding and throughput and has not valued health. And until we value health, we're going to continue to squander money in this system. Here's a study that just came out looking at trust in hospitals and doctors. It was 70% just 4.5 years ago. Now it's 40%. The biggest decline in public trust in any institution or profession in history. Now the medical establishment is scrambling to ask why, and they have their own ideas. People like Peter Attia and I are spreading misinformation. That's why trust is down. But the way to fight bad ideas, if you think someone has a bad idea, are more ideas. We need an open civil discourse. We cannot trust a small group of central planners in healthcare to get it right when they're using their opinion and not good scientific standards. Public trust is down because people realize they've been lied to. And it's not just with some COVID policies, depending on how you see the COVID pandemic. It's with the low-fat diet. We got that wrong for 70 years. We still get it wrong. I still see low-fat foods at every cafe I go to, low-fat milk in every school lunch program in the United States. We got opioids wrong for 30 years, saying they were non-addictive, igniting the opioid epidemic. That's a manufactured crisis that does not exist in any other country in the world except the United States. We separated babies from their mothers at birth for 50 years, for days. Why? Because we had to have the baby in the corner so we could poke and pry the baby. The babies belong with the mother. We got childbirth wrong for nearly 50 years. We got the overuse of antibiotics wrong for 60 years. We still have it wrong. We've ignored the microbiome. And the biggest blind spot of American medicine, our poisoned food supply. And so we've poisoned the food supply, engineered these highly addictive chemicals, allowed pesticides and toxins into the supply, and wonder why we have the biggest chronic disease epidemic in history, why our nation's children are sick and crying out for help. The solution is not more medications. The solution is to be honest with people and finally start talking about the incredible new body of scientific research on health. So thank you for your time. I'm going to be around afterwards. I'll leave you with Claude Bernard, the father of modern medicine. He said, we all have our biases, but you have to recognize your bias and suspend those biases actively. It's an active process because our biases are subconscious, but don't think we don't all have them. We have to recognize we have biases, and when new information comes in, actively suspend those biases so we can be impeccably objective. He implored all doctors to do that, but really it was a broad lesson that would be perfect in today's society, in politics, in business decisions, and in medical science as well. The book comes out tomorrow, or this Saturday, I don't remember, officially Monday. I think we have copies here for some folks. You can buy it online also. People, by the way, have asked me in the resident, which guy is playing me? Yes, it's the little brown guy in the corner. I hope you enjoy the book as much as I enjoyed writing it with the direction of Marshall Allen. And I wish you were here to see it do so well right now and make an impact in society. Sonia, thanks for being here. Dave, Linan, thank you, and I love you guys. Thank you for being such a good group of friends.